Hey everybody, it's your boy, and last video I teased a subject called intellectual hipsterism. Now, what is intellectual hipsterism? Well, I suppose what intellectual hipsterism is kind of two things. So there's the obvious part that it's something that people do to feel trendy, to feel like they're part of some cool group. So for example, they will read books, they will entertain ideas that makes them feel like they're part of some nice big hip ivory tower that they can be a part of and huff each other's farts. There's that side of it, which is something that we've seen not just in recent times with a lot of my coverage on certain communities online, but also in the past. In the 19th century, it was full of intellectual hipsterism well into the early 20th century, and let's just say that there were certain consequences to that intellectual hipsterism, but they didn't know that was going to happen. And then there's the other half, which I guess is the hipsters who make the intellectually hipstery ideologies. These are people who, let's just say, make careers off of being incredibly pretentious, hard to understand, and basically only write for these types of people. They don't really write for the ordinary person to understand because they think that their ideas are well above the average plebs station, well above their IQ level, even though a lot of these hipsters themselves aren't particularly intelligent. They may be academics, they may have done well in university and become published authors, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're intelligent. Notable examples obviously include the entire postmodernist movement, certain elements within mysticism, also a lot of the more esoteric, traditional right-wing philosophers. We all know a certain Italian is very much part of that mould. Now, why do I have a problem with intellectual hipsterism? Well, the problem is, whenever these types of people infect a movement, or dare I say even start a movement, which they can do, they're not always followers of whatever's cool and trendy. Somebody has to invent these things, and sometimes the people who invent these things are themselves intellectual hipsters. The problem is that when they enter movements, they start to derail them, and it's not on purpose. A lot of these people, at least most of them anyway, do have sincere beliefs in what they want to do. They do have sincere feelings about changing the world, only they don't want to do anything, most of them. They'd rather just spend all day in their echo chambers with their friends, talking about the next cool philosopher, the next cool ideology, the next cool utopia that they've thought of, what somebody else has thought of, and it ends up being just neutered. They don't do anything. And then when you criticise them and say, well, what exactly will these do for the world, for your country, for society? If they're on the right, they will call you a degenerate and that you must be a communist. And if they're on the left, they'll call you a capitalist pig. They will then say that you're obviously against marginalised peoples. And then we're stuck with nothing getting done. At the very least, the left has enough of an activist class, as I said before in the last video, that all these people will kind of either be ignored or they will be pushed into activism or are activists themselves. But on the right, they're not, usually. They're not activists. They are, well, intellectual hipsters. They don't do anything. They're slacktivists, if anything. Now, what about the intellectual hipsters that actually create material? The ones who actually do things, at least to some limited capacity. Let's take, for example, Slavoj Žižek, who, in my opinion, is the premier intellectual hipster, at least on the left, if not in general. What does he actually do? Well, he's a very well-published author. He's written how many books? Loads of them, in not just his native language, but in English also, and translated. He is an academic. That's really about it. But the role he serves is actually kind of important to the left. Whether or not he actually knows it, it does actually help them a great deal. What he does is he runs, well, damage control. He might write propaganda. And he will, I guess, create a face for communism, Marxism, whatever you want to call it, the left, that makes it cool and hip. That will make it sound different to what it actually is. He is somebody who they can hide behind, the ones who are really controlling the movement and orchestrating all the activism and stuff that has ruined the world. He is one of many public faces, and that's his job, whether he knows it or not. He could well be a useful idiot who is sincere in his beliefs and thinks that he's honestly trying to change the world through debate and publishing articles and books and stuff like that, and that may well be the case. But to his handlers, which he may not necessarily know that they're his handlers, he is a propaganda tool. He is marketing, essentially. And what he does really well is to couch their ideas, which are actually quite simple and barbaric, into, well, let's just say, very flowery, complicated ideas that are hard to break down. He is well known for being very verbose in his language, and he makes it sound better as a result. And he's not the only person that's ever done this. There are some people who choose a more simpler route to make the barbaric ideas of communism sound reasonable and nice. They're the types of people who call themselves liberals in America when they're not. They're actually progressives or communists. The Young Turks, for example, when they're not being stupid, are very capable of making their leftism sound somewhat reasonable, because it's not about forced collectivization of society and state control of everything. No. It's about helping the poor guy on the street. It's about helping that family who are unemployed feed their children. It's that kind of thing. And with Slavoj Žižek, it's about complicated matters of what is violence, what is this, that and the other, and European civilizational aspects of blah blah blah. You all know what he talks about. And then when he goes and debates people like Jordan Peterson, who may not be the best at debates, when Jordan Peterson rightly points out that there are Marxist professors overwhelmingly in universities and they're postmodern idiots, whatever it was that he said to him, Zizek, who's pretty wily and clever, can run damage control and say, well, who are they? It's a stupid question. We all know who they are. We can list 5 names if we wanted to. Zizek is one of them. He is one of those academics. But when you're in a debate like that, it's kind of difficult, especially in the way he phrases the question, especially how Jordan Peterson phrased his answer, his point. Unfortunately, on the right, these people are largely useless. They do exactly what I've said before in the video. They just have these little circle jerks where they have their intellectual of the week, their philosophy of the month, their ideology of the year, and then they will move on to the next one. They will have various different people who will have their own pet ideologues that they love, at least for however long it is they're going to be, and they will then change that. And it's very hard to pinpoint what exactly they want in society, what they want to change, what they actually believe in, because everything keeps changing. And it's usually because there are figureheads in these movements, in these groups, that are dictating what these people should read, what these people should believe in. And that is damaging, whether they know it or not. It leaves them open to grifters who can recognise that there's something there to make a model on. I think we all know who does that. And beyond maybe some physical meetups, where again it's just a circle jerk of like-minded people as opposed to actually doing something, like activism, like subversion, propaganda, fighting back against the left. They just make speeches about how, some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make. Yes, I've actually heard that. And it makes me frustrated because there could be so many more men of action on the right, but instead we're being more and more dominated by people who don't want to do anything. And to be fair, that is something that has been the case for years. But usually it used to be people who were not necessarily hipsters, just weak. Now we're replacing the weak people with slacktivists. People who announce to the world that we will do this, there will be a change, this is our idea of the week for that, but then not do anything. Yes, I know it takes time, money and effort to get these things off the ground. I understand that. I'm the one who's been saying it's going to take us years to get out of this rut, but I don't see anything. I don't see the start of any of this changing. Ultimately, you do have to stop this behaviour and decide what you actually are. Who are you? What are you? What is your group? What are your aims? What are your desires? What do you want to do? How are you going to do it? But I've already said that before, so I'd be treading old ground at this point. So anyway, in conclusion, intellectual hipsters, on the surface at least, not so bad, but when you peel back the layers, you realise these people are actually a bit of a hindrance, depending on what side you're on. If you're on a political side that has enough activists, enough people with brain cells to use these people as fronts and propaganda, whether they know it or not, excellent. But if you're a movement that doesn't have any of that, they're useless and will derail you and will just further increase the factionalism and inaction of your movement. So anyway, I'll see you all later, guys.